As soon as Gregory Hollister labeled me financially ignorant, I felt every eye in the courtroom focus on me. With the familiar air of a man who had previously humiliated numerous opposing parties, he declared my lack of comprehension in financial management. "Your Honor," he stated, leaving his derisive words hanging like a teacher addressing a slow learner, "my client's husband clearly has no basic understanding of asset management. He cannot account for discrepancies in his business accounts because he has never properly managed his finances." Judge Patricia Weston, aged 63 with 31 years on the bench, had heard every theatrical act from divorce attorneys. She wasn't swayed by Hollister's display of grandeur, but she demanded answers. "Mr. Caldwell," she asked, "could you elucidate the $47,000 withdrawal from your business account in March?" I could have answered that question then. "You've paid for metallurgy equipment with receipts, purchase orders, and installation records as evidence. This is today's focus, but before we delve into it, consider an overlooked fact. Money launderers aren't always apparent criminals. Sometimes they appear as your spouse. Annually, shell company exploitation costs the U.S. about $70 billion. Remarkably, many of these scams involve partners recruited due to their trustworthiness. So I present a query. If your partner suddenly began earning double their usual income from consulting work, would you question it or simply be content with the additional funds? Ponder this while observing what happened to this husband who eventually chose to scrutinize closely. However, I've prepared extensively for 6 months, and Gregory Hollister has just provided me with the opportunity. In response to Mr. Hollister's comments on financial literacy, let me clarify that while I may not be a financial expert, I took the initiative 6 months ago by hiring one due to peculiarities in our joint accounts which my wife managed. A seasoned professional with 23 years of experience in international tax fraud cases, Mr. Howard Jerry from the former IRS Criminal Investigation Division, has prepared a report which I intend to present to this court. Mr. Hollister's demeanor remained unaltered, yet I noticed his jaw tighten. Meanwhile, my wife Veronica, who I have been married to for 11 years, shifted uneasily in her seat. During the past 8 years of our marriage, I had witnessed her lie on numerous occasions, but it wasn't until recently that I fully grasped what was happening. Judge Weston accepted the submitted document, which appears highly unusual. Disclosure of assets versus instigating external financial investigations, Your Honor. The investigation pertains to the assets undisclosed by my spouse. Specifically, assets that were supposed to be disclosed according to discovery requirements. Now, Mr. Hollister has risen. Your Honor, this is a clear stalling tactic. My client has fully complied with financial disclosure as mandated. On the contrary, I interject, your client declared total assets of $412,000. However, Mr. Jerry's investigation uncovered offshore accounts holding $2.3 million. The courtroom was left in a hushed silence, save for the low hum of the heating system. Judge Weston paused, putting down her pen. "Mr. Hollister, I require you and your client to step forward to the bench." "Your Honor, I object vehemently at this moment, Mr. Hollister." While they confer near the bench, I stole a glance towards the gallery. A man in a gray suit who had entered just 2 minutes earlier was seated in the back row, hands folded, observing the proceedings with keen professional interest. Howard Jerry meticulously responded when I questioned him regarding potential individuals concerned about international tax fraud connected to a seemingly modest marketing consultant. The Internal Revenue Service showed great interest. The situation began the previous summer with a small incident. Veronica announced acquiring a new client, a tech startup requiring branding advice. She quoted a fee of $85,000 for 3 weeks of work. I offered my congratulations. We dined together. She chose the expensive wine she typically shunned, discussing how this was a game changer for her career. 2 weeks later, I required documents to present at a material supplier meeting. My printer ran out of ink. I used Veronica's home office laptop instead. Upon opening it, her email was already active. The displayed message was from her client. It stated, "Money transfer to your account. G says the Cayman route functioned flawlessly. No red flags." G represented Gregory Hollister. Twice have I encountered him. First at a bar association gathering Veronica persuaded me to attend. Secondly at a charity auction. Both times he exhibited the obligatory politeness of one compelled to acknowledge a relative's presence. I refrained from questioning Veronica. Instead, I followed the methodology of a metallurgist faced with an enigma. The first examination involved scrutinizing our shared accounts. Over the past 3 years, Veronica deposited 22 individual consulting fees, ranging from $45,000 to $130,000. Each deposit originated from a distinct LLC, all sharing generic titles such as Summit Consulting Group, Nexus Solutions, Apex Strategic Partners. Secondly, I conducted an online search of these companies. Most were rudimentary websites established shortly after paying Veronica, none disclosing any physical locations other than mail forwarding services. 2 shared identical, about us, sections word for word. Lastly, I inquired about her profession during a dinner conversation. Pure curiosity drove my questions regarding her clients' industries and obstacles. She evaded clear responses and switched subjects. When I delicately probed, she grew agitated. "You've never shown concern for my career previously. Why this sudden curiosity?" This statement revealed everything to me. She wasn't poor at deceit. She was proficient at it, and she recognized when she was nearing the boundaries of her premeditated narrative. I spent $600 in a consultation with Howard Jerry. I presented him with the names of shell companies and deposit patterns. He listened attentively, jotting down occasional notes in a leather portfolio. Upon my conclusion, he inquired, "How much do you wish to learn?" "All of it, and I require documentation that would be valid in federal court." Howard stated his charge, $25,000 for an extensive investigation. That same day, I liquidated my personal brokerage account and transferred the funds. 3 weeks later, Howard handed over a bound report containing 847 pages of documentation. Sitting in his office while he guided me through it felt like witnessing my marriage crumble into columns of numbers and wire transfer records. Veronica didn't merely conceal funds. She and Gregory Hollister collaborated to establish a covert financial system. This is how it functioned. Hollister established a series of shell corporations, registered in Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada, known for their lenient disclosure regulations. Whenever Veronica required money transfer, she would bill one of these shells for supposed consulting services. The shell company would remunerate her from its U.S. bank account. However, the funds for the shell company were sourced through wire transfers from offshore accounts located in the Cayman Islands and Belize. Money that originated from other sources entirely, according to Howard's investigation, was traced back to these offshore accounts. These offshore accounts belonged to 3 of Hollister's other clients, affluent individuals embroiled in contentious divorces. They were relocating matrimonial assets overseas to evade their spouses. Hollister would take 20–30% as his cut, then channel portions through his network of shell companies to give the appearance that the money was legitimate when it re-entered the U.S. banking system. Veronica wasn't merely a client, but served as Howard's money launderer. The consulting fees she declared as legitimate income were primarily structured payments for laundering funds via false business transactions. Additionally, some funds were direct bribes for facilitating the recruitment of other distressed spouses into Hollister's scheme. Approximately $3.1 million was moved through this system over a span of 8 years by Veronica. She kept $2.3 million in offshore accounts under her name, while the rest was paid to Hollister as fees. Upon inquiry about her motives, Howard explained that they were financially comfortable and she had legitimate consulting work. However, he pointed out that Veronica's involvement in Gregory Hollister's fraudulent network began 2 years before their marriage in 2012, as indicated by the first shell company payment to her. Howard whispered, "There's more to tell. 6 months prior to your marriage, you recall that your wife deposited $50,000 into a joint account, which you opened together. You remember it was a wedding gift from her aunt, who supposedly sold some property. The sale actually took place. However, the money she received was only $18,000, not $50,000. The remaining $32,000 came from one of Hollister's shell companies. Your wife used illicit funds to bolster the appearance of your family's legitimate wealth." I stared, trying to absorb it all. Our entire financial foundation, our house down payment, our untouched emergency fund, the college savings for future children we discussed, was partially built on Hollister's fraudulent operation. "Can you prove this?" I inquired. "I can confirm the money transactions, the shell companies, and your wife's role, but there seems to be something missing." Howard displayed a spreadsheet from his phone, pointing out a pattern. For the past 3 years, regular deposits were made into her accounts. In 2018, these deposits grew by 40% and their frequency doubled. Something had certainly changed. That was when we purchased the house, I explained slowly. "We required a larger down payment than what we had saved," I added. Veronica mentioned she'd been setting aside bonus money. She seemed to have been preparing for something substantial, possibly understanding the need for substantial liquid assets. Howard scrutinized me intently. "Mr. Caldwell, have you ever considered that your wife might have married you because you were beneficial to this operation?" This question lingered between us. I wanted to refute it promptly, defend the woman I had loved for a decade, but I had already seen the proof. I merely hadn't structured it into that specific narrative. In what way would I be useful? You are a metallurgist with a prosperous small business, steady legal income, an unblemished financial background. If your wife needed to justify sudden wealth, a successful spouse serves as a cover, I replied. If anyone doubted her financial transactions, she could argue they were investments in her business endeavors. I drove home on autopilot that day. Veronica was preparing dinner when I arrived, humming to a tune from her phone. She asked about my day. I replied it was uneventful. We ate pasta and discussed if we should replace the old couch in the living room. I didn't bring up the issue then either. Instead, I spent 4 additional months observing, recording, and preparing. Howard advised me to wait until we had solid, indisputable evidence. Most importantly, he wanted to time everything appropriately. Your divorce is a secondary matter, he clarified during one of our regular meetings. The IRS and federal prosecutors will be more interested in Hollister's operation. If we reveal this correctly, your wife becomes a witness against him. This gives you a stronger position in the divorce settlement and may lessen her criminal charges. However, she has been actively involved in money laundering for quite some time, so might seems questionable. The action she's involved in constitutes a severe federal offense. Yet if she fully cooperates, testifies against Hollister, and restores the assets, prosecutors may present her with a lenient sentence. I made it clear that her sentence didn't matter to me. What did was avoiding implication myself. You've been thoroughly cleared, I assured her. You can demonstrate your ignorance of the offshore accounts and shell companies by providing documents supporting your tax returns and verifying the information you had. In truth, you're a victim in this situation. She exploited your clean record as a cover. It was then that I grasped the true nature of Howard's proposal. This wasn't merely about proving Veronica concealed assets during our divorce. It was about dismantling an extensive criminal network, with me portrayed as an innocent party who had helped uncover it. On our 11th wedding anniversary, I spent the day copying files from Veronica's laptop onto an encrypted drive, while she was allegedly attending a marketing conference in Austin. Investigations by Howard revealed she was coordinating logistics with 2 of Hollister's other clients, an incident that took place 5 months ago. In this courtroom today, I observed Judge Weston ending her bench conference with Hollister and Veronica. Although both appeared calm, Hollister's neck displayed a conspicuous redness above his collar. They returned to their table. The judge then addressed the courtroom, announcing a 30-minute recess while demanding an immediate supplemental financial disclosure from Mr. Hollister and her intention to review the investigation report. She further stated that if even half of the allegations were true, they faced more significant issues than just a dispute over assets division. Standing, she left for her chambers. As soon as the door closed, Hollister turned towards me across the aisle. His professional facade had crumbled. "You have no idea what you've set in motion," he whispered quietly. "I've exposed international tax fraud." Veronica grabbed him firmly. "Greg, we need to discuss this privately," she warned him sharply, preventing any further comment. To me, she explained that the report was acquired through legitimate means. "No hacking or unauthorized access," she clarified. Howard Jerry, a licensed investigator, used lawful methods. Bank records were obtained via valid subpoenas. Shell company registrations, publicly accessible records. Documentation of wire transfers from international banking compliance offices that responded to legitimate inquiries. The understanding dawned on him. This wasn't a hastily assembled accusation. It was a forensic investigation prepared for every legal objection he might raise. Hollister's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and something in his expression shifted. Perhaps fear or perhaps acceptance. "That's likely the message from the state bar," I speculated. "Howard filed an ethics complaint against you yesterday. The accusations encompass conflict of interest, mixing client funds, and deceiving the court. The same evidence I've submitted to the judge is included in the complaint." Veronica stood up abruptly and addressed me directly for the first time since this began. She appeared as the wronged wife with her husband who was supposedly inattentive. "However, we are no longer on the same side. You are still my wife, but I never was your wife. Instead, you were Gregory Hollister's business partner seeking a legitimate cover story. Makeup and a formal court outfit attempted to mask your true identity. Yet you don't comprehend. I fully grasp your actions. You began laundering money for Hollister in 2012. You encountered me in 2014, finding someone reliable, with steady income, a clean background, and just ambitious enough to be convincing but not observant enough to detect abnormalities. You wedded me for the same motive you established those offshore corporations. I was part of the setup. This discussion has ended, Veronica. Don't utter another word. However, a voice echoed from behind us. I'd prefer if both of you continued talking. We turned. The man in the gray suit had risen and was walking towards us. He displayed his badge and identification. Special Agent Michael Torres, IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Mr. Hollister, Ms. Caldwell, I require your presence. You have some queries regarding offshore accounts and transfers via wire dating back to 2012. Veronica's countenance paled. Hollister swiftly transitioned into lawyer mode despite representing himself now. Unless you possess a warrant, we have 4 warrants. 2 for business premises, 2 for residences. Your office is currently being searched, Mr. Hollister. Ms. Caldwell, agents are executing a warrant at your residence as we converse. Agent Torres gazed at me. Mr. Caldwell, you must stand ready for further interrogation, but feel free to depart. We've examined the materials you submitted via Mr. Jerry. You've proven quite beneficial. I merely nodded, unable to speak. The courtroom doors swung open, admitting 2 additional agents. Veronica and Hollister were led away, with Hollister continuing to demand the warrants, while Veronica remained quiet and fixed her gaze straight ahead. Judge Weston reappeared after a 20-minute absence, stepping into an almost vacant courtroom. Just myself, my lawyer Malcolm Price, who wisely kept silent during the disclosures, the court reporter, and you, Mr. Caldwell, the judge stated. I've scrutinized enough of this report to comprehend we're dealing with criminal matters beyond the purview of this court. Consequently, I'm postponing these divorce hearings in light of ongoing federal investigations. Nevertheless, I'm also mandating an immediate freeze on all accounts linked to your spouse and Mr. Hollister. Have you arranged accommodation? For 3 months I've been renting an apartment, Your Honor, as I assumed I wouldn't be returning home. She almost smiled, sensibly so. The court will resume sessions once the criminal matters are settled. In the meantime, avoid contact with your wife except through lawyers. Got it. Malcolm and I exited the courthouse where news crews were gathering. It seems someone alerted them. Most likely Howard, who appreciates the influence of public scrutiny in white-collar crime cases. Do you wish to make a statement? Malcolm asked. No, let the evidence do the talking. We brushed past reporters without responding. 3 blocks away, seated in my car, I allowed myself to feel it for the first time. Not victory, but rather the fatigue that sets in after holding one's breath for 6 months. My phone rang. Howard speaking. Did you notice the news vans? He asked. Yes, within a week, the federal prosecutor's office will announce charges. Her case has been progressing simultaneously with ours. Your evidence expedited its process. The outcome for Veronica hinges on her cooperation. If she testifies against Hollister and his associates, she could receive a minimum of 3 to 5 years. Conversely, if she resists, the sentence may extend to 12 to 15 years. With her finances frozen and facing criminal charges, she holds no negotiating power. You'll secure an uncontested divorce. Most likely, you'll retain the majority of marital assets not tainted by illicit activities. The house, your business, legitimate savings, these will be yours. Although part of the house's down payment was funded with illegal money, you have made mortgage payments from clean income for 6 years. The court is expected to grant you the property and demand reimbursement for the tainted portion from her seized assets, if any are left after restitution. I observed people passing by on the sidewalk, carrying out their daily routines. How did you discern that? I inquired. Initially, you had harbored doubts about more than just concealed assets when I joined you. Pondering for a moment, Howard remarked, I've been unraveling financial fraud for 23 years. I've dealt with countless cases. Yet the pattern you outlined, shell companies, synchronized deposits, an intricate infrastructure that was too elaborate for a single individual, hinted at a larger scheme. You might have alerted me that my entire marriage was falsehood. Could you have believed me without direct evidence? He was correct. I required tangible proof, verification, and irrefutable evidence. There's one more point, Howard added. Hollister maintained extensive records, possibly as a safeguard against his clients ever incriminating him. This morning, the IRS seized his files. Your wife wasn't just laundering money. She orchestrated a scheme involving 4 others, including spouses of Hollister's clients, to perform this service. She wasn't merely participating, but was instrumental in the entire operation. Your wife was essentially managing the transfer of funds while Hollister provided legal cover. I concluded the call and waited until dusk in the car. The trial occurred 8 months later. Federal authorities accused Veronica of conspiring to launder money, structuring financial transactions to skirt reporting requirements, and submitting false tax returns. They charged Hollister with these offenses, as well as fraud, obstructing justice, and leading a continuing criminal enterprise. Despite the charges, Hollister disputed every one. Veronica accepted a plea bargain following 3 weeks of jury selection when it became apparent that the evidence was substantial. She testified comprehensively about the workings of the operation, disclosed other clients involved, and relinquished control of offshore accounts. This led to 6 years in federal prison instead of the possible 23 years she could have received. The divorce was finalized while she was awaiting sentencing. There was no dispute. All assets were divided in my favor, and the marriage, which lasted 11 years, ended with a judge's signature on papers that Veronica signed from a county jail cell. I retained the house. I sold it 8 months later because I couldn't bear to walk through rooms where I had once thought I shared a life with someone who was not real. Howard's firm received a whistleblower reward of 15% from the IRS for the recovered funds from Hollister's scheme, totaling $47 million after everything was traced. Since I initiated the investigation, Howard allocated a portion to me. I placed it in a trust and have not used it since. Occasionally, people question how I could have been unaware for 11 years, living with someone without detecting the deception. The reality is I had my suspicions. Numerous minor instances hinted at something amiss. However, driven by love and a desire to be optimistic, I chose to dismiss these signs. My last encounter with Veronica was during her sentencing hearing, an event I wasn't obligated to attend, but decided to for the opportunity to hear what she might say in court. She stood there in an orange jumpsuit, hands trembling, reading a pre-prepared statement about remorse and accepting responsibility. It echoed every other defendant's words I had heard while awaiting her case. The judge then asked if she had anything more to add. For the first time in 10 months, Veronica looked at me directly. "I apologize for dragging you into this," she said. "You deserved better than being manipulated." Not "I'm sorry I deceived you," or "I'm sorry I constructed our marriage on a lie." Regretful she dragged me into her plan instead of the plan itself, the court imposed a 6-year sentence in federal prison on her, with an expected 4 years served under good conduct. I exited that courthouse and immediately drove to my new, smaller, and more economical apartment. Howard once asked me what I'd do after everything settled. "Start anew," I replied. "Construct something genuine this time. That's precisely what I'm doing now. My metallurgy firm is expanding." I usually work late into the night, immersed in the detail of testing materials and resolving problems with concrete solutions. Occasionally, my thoughts wander to the past self who dined on pasta with Veronica, talking about replacing our couch. That man seems strikingly innocent now, but I don't despise him. He loved someone he believed in, and there is no disgrace in that. The blame lies with the individual who determined that love could be profitable and exploited it financially. Gregory Hollister was disbarred and received a 14-year sentence. 3 other clients were sentenced to terms ranging from 5 to 9 years. The IRS recovered $31 million of the $47 million hidden offshore funds, while the remainder vanished into accounts unlikely to be traced. During the investigation, I testified twice when federal prosecutors asked if I'd had any suspicions before discovering the laptop emails. I told them the truth. I trusted my wife, and that trust left me oblivious to patterns I should have questioned. The prosecutor, a woman named Rachel Kim who specialized in financial fraud cases, nodded as though she had heard it before. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, "those who fall for these scams aren't foolish, they are trusting, and the ones running them specifically target victims because of their trust." "I wasn't meant to be a victim," I replied. "I was intended to be useful." You possessed a dual quality that made you ideal for her objectives. Reflecting on this calculated scheme, sometimes, I acknowledge a reluctant admiration for the dedication to a prolonged deceit. Veronica didn't develop feelings for me and then gradually involve me in her deception. Rather, she evaluated my utility and engineered an entire relationship to capitalize on it. Although there's a sense of respect for such long-term commitment to fraud, there's also liberation in realizing I no longer have to ponder or rationalize inconsistencies or doubt my comprehension. The proof is collected, archived, and legally validated. My marriage wasn't deteriorating, it was never genuine from the start, and recognizing that simplifies progress. Last month, I recruited 2 new staff members for my business. They are intelligent, competent, and offer expertise I lack. I scrutinize their pasts meticulously, not out of paranoia, but because I've become more cautious following previous experiences. I'll likely remain cautious, yet I'm also constructing something significant. A venture grounded in authentic labor, genuine worth, and meaningful connections with clients who rely on my services. Despite its smaller scale compared to the life I envisioned with Veronica, it's uniquely mine, tangible, and that suffices.